Spike, the gator that you met, was actually found in a crack house drug raid. And they used him to protect their money and their drugs, but they were...
The guard gator.
Yes, exactly.
Welcome to the Wilderness Wonders Podcast, Episode 3. Today we have two very special guests with us, Anita Wolf and Kenny Elvin. Both individuals are veteran falconers and wonderful people to chat with. Anita has spent most of her life educating and working with birds of prey, and Kenny is an amazing, experienced, and passionate falconer. This episode was brought to you by Mike's Falconry. On your next purchase of $50 or more, use the code WILDERNESS, WILDERNESS, and you can get 5% off your order. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, well, welcome to the Wilderness Wonders podcast. I am actually visiting from Utah. I'm visiting California. We're here in Paso Robles, and pretty darn close to where I grew up. And I grew up in Pismo Beach area, which is only like 40 miles from here. Yeah. Gorgeous area. We just had a really fun morning. Flying a couple Harrises and just flew the Lanner. I keep wanting to say Saker Falcon. The Lanner Falcon. That was really fun to see. How about you two go ahead and introduce yourselves first, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So my name is Anita Wolf. Been a falconer for 32 years now, and absolutely love flying birds. It's like my happy place. It's awesome.
Awesome. Cool. How about you?
Yeah, I'm Kenny Elvin. This is just getting into my 18th year doing falconry. I love to fly, love to hunt. I've had a bunch of birds that I fly every day, and I've got a nutty bunch of birds. So,
well, when I walked in, you had a brand new Harris. Well, new to you.
Somebody gave me a Harris hawk.
Somebody found a Harris's hawk, and she looked pretty good. She looked pretty comfortable in her fist.
She calmed right down. She got me yesterday, and then today she footed me swiped past me like 15 times. Connected up enough to give me a little bit of something to think about. But she's calm.
So, what was the first thing that I guess started your falconry journey, or started you interested either in wildlife or animals? What led you to the point that you're at now?
So, I actually, ever since I was a little kid, wanted to work with animals, wanted to be a veterinarian, then realized that is a lot of school, and not particularly fond of school. Went to an exotic animal training school, and that led me to my first job training North American animals for a stage show at the San Diego Wild Animal Park. And my boss was a falconer, and I didn't have a lot of interest in working with birds. And he said to me, Anita, you need to become a falconer. And I'm like, well, I don't know. And he goes, no, it'll look good on your resume. I'm like, okay, why not? So he got me started on my journey, and I had no idea the impact it would take in my life. Now that I'm not doing wildlife education in schools, I only do falconry. I do abatement, and I do falconry school, just get people up close to raptors, because I love seeing that face they make the first time the bird lands on their glove.
It's fantastic. It's kind of a really fun, magical moment. That's probably actually where we first met, was when you were doing your animal education, and we didn't even realize it. You ran, or you started
Zoo to You
here. Yep. And you traveled all over, like San Luis Obispo County. Did you go further than that?
Yeah, we would go 2 hours from here. So all the way up to almost to San Jose, down to Santa Barbara, Bakersfield, Visalia, that whole middle part of the state, which really wasn't covered as far as wildlife education goes. There were other wildlife education companies, but nobody was covering the central part of the
Yeah.
state. So we kind of like just stepped
You were able
in.
to just kind of capitalize
Yeah.
on that. You didn't have a whole lot of competition. That's awesome.
Yeah, it worked out really well for us. That's for sure.
My most memorable moment seeing the Zoo to You program when I was probably about 10 or 12, somewhere in there. I saw you guys a couple times, but I do remember you having the alligator. It may have been your lap. I'm pretty sure. I think it was you, but I'm not 100% sure. You sat him down. You're talking about the gator, and it just takes a giant piss into the into the grass, and that for some reason stuck in my mind.
We always say there's nothing better than when an animal goes to the bathroom in front of the kids because they lose their minds.
I don't know why we love it.
I don't know.
So weird.
But it's such an incredible teachable moment. Yeah. And I think that was the time that we realized that we needed to keep our hand over the opening of the alligator so he wouldn't do that on stage, although it made an impression on you, so maybe...
Well, it became so memorable, and I think that was the first time I got that close to an alligator ever. And that was when I was just barely starting to really fall in love with reptiles and snakes, and so that memory did play a part into my love for animals and wildlife.
See, and
so yeah.
So you're my one. We always joke that of all the people that you educate, you just need one to follow through. So here you are. You're my one.
There you go. So you definitely assisted in helping me really, fall in love with animals like that. What was it like running that show? Because you started it yourself. How did you start it and then keep it going?
Yeah, that was tough. We started off. It was myself, my roommate in college, and my boyfriend at the time, who turned into my husband. Now my husband, because he's no longer my husband. But we felt this need to teach kids. And so what we decided is we put the whole corporation together, got our nonprofit status. Luckily, we had this land here, so we were able to build here. And thank God for the support of our parents, because I don't know how we would have been able to do it. But we just started rescuing animals and using those animals to educate with, like Spike, the gator that you met, was actually found in a crack house drug raid. And they used him to protect their money and their drugs, but they were...
The guard gator.
Yes, exactly. And so when the cops came in to bust them, they opened up the bathroom, and here's this... at that time he was 4 feet long, and they immediately shut the door, called us up and said, can you come get this gator? And this is prior to Crocodile Dundee and Steve Irwin. So we just kind of jumped in there and grabbed him and pulled him out, and they all made a big wide berth around us as we walked the gator out. So Spike, as his name is now 6.5 feet long, and gosh,
he's still kicking, huh?
He's still kicking. They live a long time.
I know. That's so awesome.
He's an amazing gator. We really lucked out with him. He's very calm. He lets kids touch him, and we always say if you get to touch something, the impression is so much deeper. So.
Yeah, the thing that you let us touch was the chinchilla. And that was my first experience with the chinchilla as well.
They're so amazing.
How soft they were, and learning how they bathe in ash and things like that. I like that. Just that one show at the birthday party, the information has stuck with me through all those years. Or at least I retained some of it. Even with the porcupine, talking about the serrated barbs. One actually got stuck in your shirt while you were doing the show.
We actually do that on purpose.
That was a little
spoiler.
Yeah. Now I'm so disappointed.
I do it backstage. So cool. I shove one in my shirt and then I hold it.
Do you still run the show, or?
I don't. It's actually my daughter and my ex-husband that run it now.
Okay.
It's huge. I mean, we actually absorbed 2 other wildlife education companies, and so we have one facility they have one facility in Sacramento and then one down in Los Angeles. So we're serving awesome. Almost all of California. It's pretty amazing.
That is amazing. That has grown. That's kind of my dream as well, to be able to start an education program, and we've been working with some reptile programs in Utah. It's a little bit more competitive, though. You got lucky. Did you involve your birds of prey in that program as well?
Actually, my first falconry bird, which was my red tail, we would fly over the kids in the shows. And funny is, we would, on our way to the show, we would stop in a field, hunt the red tail, and usually catch something, or we'd do it on the way back, but then we'd always include that bird in the show. And watching kids as this bird is like just barely going over their heads, it was always awesome. But then we started acquiring more displaced ones, ones that were injured, couldn't be released. And so it became a little bit more intense, and we actually started doing just a bird of prey program, and just about raptors. And it was one of the best received programs we ever did, which kind of surprised me.
I think one of the reasons why like these bird shows do so well, or why people love them so much, I think it's because it's the easiest wildlife that you can find on your own. Birds of prey stand out, and they hang out. Most of them hang out right in the open, and it's so easy to spot them and find them in the wild.
And I think
just down your road, I saw at least 4 red tails coming. And so, and that, I'm looking for them all the time. But even somebody who isn't, if they just at least know that there's red tails or there's these birds of prey in the area from these education programs, they find them.
They do,
and people get excited about it. I think that's why those programs tend to do really well, especially the bird programs.
Well, and I think because we can't fly, it's such a mythical behavior to us, and it just is something that, like, who wouldn't want to know how to fly? I mean, if I could fly, I would be. So I think when they get to see the birds fly, it's just such an awe-inspiring part of the program, and it always just touches them. And I see more kids now, like, looking up, whereas they never would have before. So I
didn't start noticing birds of prey until I became a falconer. Well, until I started working with some like wildlife rehabilitation centers, but really started noticing them when you're falconer. There's things that you just wouldn't ever notice if you weren't one, or just looking. Just gotta look up. Stop looking at your phone so much.
Yeah,
most people do nowadays.
Yeah.
Now, how about you? How'd you start getting into falconry?
I lived out in the hills most of my life, outside of suburbia, not real wild, but I started catching frogs, and we had horses, and then started catching lizards, always had dogs, and then a group of my friends shifted from catching lizards and snakes to talking about doing falconry. And then later on I just went, oh, okay, I can do this, and started. I've had a lot of different reptiles and amphibians. I guess there's a pretty common thread to have people that are into reptiles and amphibians get involved in falconry. It really changed the way that I do things a lot. I've always had dogs. I asked Anita, what's the best animal? And I've given it a lot of thought, and I really wanted to know what's the best animal to have, and really, to me, the dog fits in so many different niches. So adding falconry, you're using similar training stuff, and now you've got a dog and a bird, and you're out in the field,
all working together.
Yeah,
it's amazing to see when all those animals kind of click, and they just they just figure it out, and and they all enjoy their time out there. What kind of caught your interest into like reptiles at first?
Catching stuff.
Just catching stuff.
Yeah, catching. I was mainly catching Scaloporus, catching bluebellies, and and we had up in the hills, we had horned toads, coastal horned toads. So started finding those, alligator lizards, a little of everything. And then, had a local pet store, and everybody's like, oh yeah, let's go to the pet store and see what they have now. And then, you start making up stuff. Back in the day, you could buy spider monkeys, you could buy chinchillas, you could, I used to have mice as pets, but I would have a mouse for about a week because I'd be carrying it around and stick it in my pocket and then start doing other stuff, and the mouse would either escape or wouldn't make it.
Well, when you start getting reptiles and snakes, every mouse you get doesn't last too long.
That's true. That's true.
Or rat. You might as well just name all the rats and mice you get after foods and feed them to the snakes.
We had a mouse named Fancy Dessert. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar background to you, where my first interest was mostly reptiles, and got into having reptiles as pets, and then discovering falconry changed kind of how you see kind of animals and wildlife and everything like that. What was your first experience with falconry? What was that like?
Well, I started, one of my old classmates, they were doing falconry. In one of the guys I hooked up with was, when we were in 3rd and 4th grade, started studying falconry underneath the falconer. And then it started really hitting home around 8th grade, when they'd bring their birds to school, and after school we'd be working with these birds outside. And I got involved with doing pest control with falconry through one of those guys, and did that for 4 or 5 years, traveled across the country working on some contracts. And you really, when you're working with an animal every day, it completely changes things because you're getting a complete feel of what's going on.
Absolutely. I when you got an animal with you, I always feel like there's like one additional, living thing that you're caring about, and that's all constantly on your mind, if they're doing okay or they're doing the right thing, or making sure they are set up how they need to be. What was your first bird that you had? Did you start with the red tail as well? Or?
Well, I had a choice. I was working with a guy, so he had Harris hawks, he had Saker falcons. So I think the first bird that I really worked with more intense was a Saker falcon. And then when I got my license, finally took the test and got my license, I got a kestrel. I trapped a kestrel. I'd actually trapped a couple that I'd worked with. When we're in the field, we're doing stuff and they get caught in traps, so you're automatically, oh yeah, I got another one, let's try this for a while, and then turn them back loose again. It's a ongoing process. Once I got my general falconer license, I for some reason just said I need to trap a red tail, and I trapped a 53 ounce female red tail, and we caught some stuff, but she would go on these big flights. She started hooking up with these crows, and they would go out and start flying this ridge line. A couple of times, like 3 different times, she caught rattlesnakes when she was out flying. I remember seeing her facing off with the local female on top of a power tower. You could hear them, but they're way far away. And she had the rattlesnake in her talons. And then she flew over. It was about a half mile from where I was sitting on top of a hill. And so I knew where she would go and roost. And using telemetry, I'd find her. But climb up the tree and see what she's got. And it's pretty neat.
Thankfully, I haven't had to run into any rattlesnakes yet, at least. Here you get the diamondbacks all year round, and we're
Oregonensis, Crotalus, viridis, the green
name.
one.
I can't remember the common name.
It's like a Oregon rattlesnake, but coastal rattlesnake. It's not as big as a diamondback.
And where I live, we get the Great Basin rattlesnakes. They don't get very big either. Thankfully, we haven't had to run with them, but my hawks grabbed a few like racers, and
cool.
Some of those small snakes. And it's really funny when you're out trying to hawk, rabbits, or you're out trying to hawk some squirrels, whatever it is that you're going after. And it's funny when the birds get distracted by all the little things you didn't want them to get distracted by.
Right, they stop and eat a mouse on the way.
On the way, and you're like, oh,
okay. Yeah.
Cool, that was so exciting.
Maybe that's why I've never flown kestrels.
They're always catching tiny things.
Tiny things.
Well, you get a kestrel small enough, you can go after starlings. I don't know how many starlings you get around here. It doesn't seem like as much, but it depends on where you go, right?
Yeah.
Seasonally, because the grape industry brings in. Oh
yeah,
so many
over on the
sounds.
vineyards, there's a lot of them. I do see that. How was Anita? How was your first, red tail? You said you had a red tail first. What
Correct.
was your first red tail like?
Was actually passed down to me from another falconer, and it was an imprint, which nothing more dangerous than an imprint red tail, and it was interesting.
Most people don't like that.
Yeah, my sponsor was kind of like, if your bird isn't really, really hard to work with, you're really not going through an apprenticeship. So he was a great bird. I mean, we would catch jacks all the time with him, but you had to be on your toes. One time I didn't have one of his jesses, and so this foot wasn't being held down, and I bent down, and he actually sliced the back of my ear open. Wow. Just because, and then I'm bleeding, and of course then that became very interesting to him. He did catch a young coyote one time.
Oh my gosh, tell us about that.
I don't know who was more scared, because I don't know what he was thinking, but I come up and there's maybe a 10-pound coyote pup, and it's wide-eyed, and my bird is wide-eyed and holding it by the face and by its shoulders. And so I kind of walked up and I'm like, I don't even know what to do now. So I just grabbed the jesses of my hawk, put my foot on the shoulders of the coyote. I threw my hawk off, and the coyote ran, and I ran, and the bird flew.
You didn't tag it? Come on.
I was so afraid that it was going to turn around and bite my bird, but, coyotes typically...
You almost had a chance to say you bagged the coyote.
Yeah.
And you missed the opportunity.
I did. I missed it. I was so scared. I didn't know. I thought for sure my bird was going to get eaten, but I actually passed that bird down to one of my apprentices, and she flew him for 2 seasons, and I had acquired a couple hair socks, and I was out there helping her fly this imprint red tail, and I'm like, now I remember why I hated this bird. But I mean, we caught a lot.
That bird a little nutty, not really afraid of anything, and willing to show you who's boss.
Oh yeah, and the more he flew after something and didn't catch it, the angrier he got.
That can work really well to his advantage as long as the anger is placed into the next slip instead of you. So, But was his anger normally expressed towards towards you or the other falconers?
He definitely tried harder each time he would miss, but every time he flew back to me, he would fly harder and grab harder. So after about 5 missed slips, you just packed it in. It was just too painful. He would grab your gloves so hard, and he would be so mad, and you're like, okay, we're done for the day because I can't handle the pain anymore. It was definitely a great experience, and it made me not afraid to fly any type of bird, because if I can survive that bird, I can survive anything.
Yeah, I noticed that a little bit, a jump between falcons and especially the bootios like the Harrises and the red tails. The falcons, they miss, and it pisses them off, and they're like, I'm gonna get that next time. And they get more and more motivated as they go. But I always feel like bootios are kind of like, I missed. Oh, man. I don't think I'm good enough. They start losing confidence until they get enough catches, and then they're like, okay, well, I'll keep trying until I get one. But then I feel like you find something special when you have that broadwing hawk that you have that red tail, or you have that Harris's, that when they miss, it pisses them off, and you notice they try hard the next time.
Yeah.
And it makes them more and more angry, and so they start trying to try harder to go after these rabbits, and you slowly see progressively better or more spectacular flights as your time goes on, and I think that's a really special quality that not all Budios have. And so it's neat that your bird kind of had that.
Yeah.
I feel like my bird kind of has that this year, which I love. But what is really awful is when that anger gets directed towards you. So how would you go about keeping, a bird that's being taking out its frustration, say on the falcon or on you? How would you redirect that to, say the quarry or something else?
I learned to get other people involved, because the more people I had flushing out rabbits, the better I could manage his anger. So if we had a bad slip where he just missed and he came back really hard, I would wait until we're all in the perfect position so that next slip would be a lot easier for him. And he started, after about 2 years, it really took him a long time to really get with the game of don't direct it towards me, direct it towards the rabbit. And he really started just nailing rabbits after that. And he just, honestly, as far as hunting, one of the best birds I ever had. You just had to be ballsy. And it was never directed towards the other people in the field. It was always my fault that he couldn't catch the rabbit. So it just became kind of taking that aggression and curving it into what I wanted him to do.
Directing it to where it should be, or at least away from you.
Yeah.
So it seems like the answer is just get more rabbits in front.
Yes.
I feel like that's so much easier said than done at times.
It is.
Trying to make sure that your bird has enough slips, because we want what's best for them. I mean, it's so interesting that we love our birds so much, but so many apprentices, especially, we trap our birds, we train them, and then we want to release them, and it's crazy how attached we get, but then are still willing to let go of them.
Well, I think because we appreciate them for what they are, not for what they provide for us as much as what the relationship that we have with them, and it's really all about them. I feel like a lot of times when I go out in the field with my birds, I'm the dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's all I really am. I'm just there to watch them.
Watch it happen.
Yeah, and watch them be themselves.
There is kind of a misconception where some people who don't know a whole lot about falconry think we're using the birds to get game for us, and it's the lazy way to hunt. When in reality, it's like we want to just see the spectacular flight. We want to witness the predator-prey relationship, and we want the hawk to have this success. And then it's honestly, for falconers, it's pretty rare that we even eat the food that they catch. We like save all of it for the bird. Most of the time, the stuff they're catching isn't even that good to eat. So like jackrabbits, most of what we're getting, they're gross, they're nasty. Maybe I'll eat a cottontail here and there, but for the most part, everything goes right to the bird. The only thing we get out of it is just the enjoyment of being out there with them.
And I always say to people, I'm just amazed that I'm privileged enough to be a part of their world.
Yeah.
To just be witness to it. And I think if you can't put yourself in that position where you're just appreciating the fact that you get to be there while they do what they do, and they allow you to be so close and to be there right when they've caught something, that to me it's still so amazing that this bird that was wild allows you to walk up while they're eating a rabbit, and then they gladly step off of that onto your fist again and ready to go again. Like, what? It baffles me. It's
within
just
a short amount of time too. Most red tails can be trained within 3 or 4 weeks, and so it's like in like 3 or 4 weeks, you're like out hawking, and this bird already understands and can see the relationship that they can have with you.
The fastest we ever got a bird from trap to the field was 8 days.
Oh,
wow. That's fast, yeah.
But he was
really
like a late catch bird. We got him January 31st. And in California, we used to have a trapping season, and it ended January 31st. So we called him Chance because it was our last chance to catch a bird. And he just happened to be a really greedy bird. He loved to eat. He was fat when we caught him. And he was hopping to the fist the next day.
Wow.
So it was
That
like,
is fast.
yeah, he was like one of the best birds we've ever trained.
Normally, when you capture a bird fat, it always takes them nearly a week to hop to the fist.
Yeah, it was just one of those weird circumstances where everything fell into place. And we were out in the field probably about 4 weeks after we trapped him, and he ended up just taking off. And so we lost him, which was fine because he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, it happens. That's the kind of beauty part about, I think, not using telemetry or GPS is you're giving the bird the opportunity to leave, and if it leaves and doesn't want to come back, it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah, and it's their natural habitat, and you just got to trust and hope that they know what they're doing, and they'll be able to, survive the rest of their life, and hope that what the time that they spent with you was sufficient to help them out through the rest of their days.
I kind of think of us as personal trainers,
Yeah, kind of.
We feed them the best food, we weigh them, we check their muscle mass, and we really work out with the birds. You know, so they are probably the most fit birds out there when they do get released because they've been really training on a high intensity level.
That's awesome. What was the name of your first hawk? I can't remember.
His name
if you
was
said.
Navarre.
Navarre, okay.
Of course.
That's actually a cool name. I like that.
His name was Bullet when I got him. He would, when he was in his giant hood, would pop up and hit the roof, and the first time I heard, the guy said, "You'll hear it. It'll scare you." And it literally sounded like someone had shot a bullet through my car.
Oh, man.
It scared the pants. I pulled over and checked on him. I'm like, "You okay?" But he became Navarre. He was good.
Awesome. So what are you guys mostly flying now? I'll have you go first.
I've been flying a Lanner Falcon for about 7-8 years now. I'm flying a bird that Anita had. We traded because my peregrine was being too noisy and I couldn't deal with it. So I flew another one for about a little over 6 years, and he got eaten. So he flew off and got eaten by red tails. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't heard very many stories of of red tails getting falcons. Normally I hear eagles getting them.
I think he flew right into her. I seriously do. I followed the signal around. I kind of saw something that I thought had happened, and then I followed what turned out to be this big female red tail for a couple of hours. Got my telemetry back about 3 days later, still attached to a leg. So
heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's tough. Especially somebody that you fly every day. I tend to fly every day.
That is part of the risk of flying. My sponsor was the first person to tell me this. Is there's falconers who lose birds, and he's meaning either they die or they get eaten or sick or fly away. There's falconers that lose birds, and there's falconers who are gonna lose birds.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So there are two types of falconers.
I mean, it happens.
It happens, and that's kind of part of the risk. We're not sheltering these animals like we do, a lot of our pets. They're out in the wild, exposed to many of the same risks that a lot of these other wild animals are exposed to.
Right.
But that is super, super unfortunate, and it seems like the longer you fly falcons, the more often it happens.
Yeah.
Right. Well, a falcon's a more dynamic animal.
Yeah.
And they fly big. It's all while they're up in the air flying around. I've flown, I don't know how many peregrines now. I had a hybrid, a Barbary cross with a Saker falcon, male Barbary Saker that I flew for about 6 years. That was would follow my truck around wherever I'd get around and be on a site, start driving around, and she'd fly around, and as soon as she wanted some food, she'd cross back and forth in front of my truck. I'd get out, lure fly her a couple of times, and give her a leg, put her back up again. She could be out for 4 hours easy. If I wanted to catch something with her, just kind of ignore her, put her up for about an hour, and she'd take something. She'd
find a pigeon or or anything that you could flush.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And yeah, she caught a lot of game. That was fun. And then
What was that falcon's name?
that was Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah, it was. There's all these birds that are just like the pinnacle experience that you have, you know, and she was really, really an interesting, fun one to fly. A lot of these jobs that I'm working, they're more suited to Harris hawks. You put a bird up, have it sitting around somewhere, maybe follow you around, you know, flushing game with them. So
you said jobs. What jobs are you doing that involves birds of prey?
I've worked on landfills. I do some industrial work. Worked on vineyards. Vineyards falcons work better. But
lots of vineyards here in California.
Yeah,
Lots of vineyards.
Tons and tons and
Yeah.
tons and tons.
I was just involved in a really neat project where the city was getting ready to remove some second growth timber, and they didn't want to have any nesting birds there. So I started at the end of January and finished up in my part of the project in July, where I was flying. We would put these platforms up in these trees about 180 foot up, and so we would climb and rappel and call the birds up to us, and we were mainly using Harris hawks. Yeah.
That's awesome. For those who are listening and don't know, but this type of job is called embaitment, and it's using a bird of prey to basically just humanely scare off the pests. All the pest birds like seagulls or starlings or anything else that might be in the area, and just the presence of a bird of prey flying around in the area will typically scare off most any smaller bird. But it's a great, humane way to go about it instead of like using poisons or loud noises, or a lot of stuff doesn't even work very well. And then come to find out that embaitment ends up working better than all of it, and it saves most companies way more money doing it that way.
We actually do cost analysis of how much like crop they're losing or how much product they're losing and how much it's going to cost for us to come in, and it's amazing that it's cheaper to have a falconer on staff with a variety of birds. And the funny part is especially Harris hawks, it almost becomes like this game to them. My Harris hawk likes to fly when a seagull's flying across. He'll kind of fly behind a tree and then come out at the last second, and you'll actually hear the seagull scream. And then he flies back to me and wiggles his butt like, yeah, I did. He thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. He's also learned to flip upside down and punch him in the chest with his feet closed, and it's hilarious to watch.
I actually saw that something like that coming in on through Santa Maria. There's kind of these rolling hills you travel through, and I saw this red-tailed hawk, two harriers, and this red-tailed hawk flips upside down and hits the harrier in the belly, and the harrier loses its balance in the air, and they pick back up, and they're having this scuffle in the middle of this, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I had a camera, or at least a lens good enough to capture some of those moments. You'd think that when you see them working with the human, you think that like, oh, they do this because we taught them that. No, they do it in the wild all the time.
Yeah, they do.
Like they're just doing what they do best.
And because we're providing them with shelter and veterinary care and everything, I think their personalities really kind of come out, and they start figuring out fun ways to do things. Especially Harris hawks.
Or more efficient.
Yeah, they're just
more
kind of, they're goofy, and people don't really attribute personalities like that to birds, but I think every single bird we fly has a different personality. And
definitely out of all the hawks out there, it does feel like Harrises have like the most kind of outgoing personalities. They just do a lot of goofy, funny things that are just so dorky, and you kind of go, why? Why are you doing that? It's so weird. And I mean, part of it is because they're like the most social bird of prey out there, and it almost feels like a Harris's acts like a baby or a juvenile's life, but like red tails, they'll kind of have that goofy dorky stage early, and then they get serious.
Yeah, they do.
and so it's really neat seeing the personalities between each one, and notice how certain personalities will work better for different situations. You could have a bird better for abatement, and then another one better for rabbits, and another. It could all be the same species, but just because of their size, their skill, or personality, they're going after and doing vastly different things.
Well, we were just talking. I have 2 Harris-Hawks that are brothers, and not only do they look different, one of them's very clean looking and he's really dark, and the other one he always looks like he just came out of the shower. He always has feathers out of place, and he's much more adventurous. He likes to do big flights, where his brother is very focused, and it's for 2 brothers to be so vastly different from each other. You would never know that they were related because they're so different from each other. And they're both really fun. It's just different scenarios for each bird seems to work.
That is, it's great, and it's cool finding those personalities that work, really, really well. Not every single bird is going to be a good falconry bird. There are some that just have a more difficult time with it, but given the time and patience, you can usually find something for them.
Yeah.
I think a lot more of the success of a certain bird is more placed on the falconer than so much the bird itself, the raptor itself.
I think it's a crapshoot. I'm really. I've had some falcons that didn't work very well for me, and
sometimes that happens.
And as I understand, the easiest thing is trade it off to somebody else because it's a new environment. The bird could work out well with somebody else.
So somebody else could have a personality that just clicks really well with the personality of the bird. And I feel like there's people out there that have just this natural affinity with animals. Somehow, any animal they get, that animal loves them, and you don't know why.
I actually had a female Harris-Hawk that I tried flying. I worked with her. We just didn't mesh, and I really felt like she wasn't this great bird. I ended up giving her to another falconer, and he loves her, loves her, and they work so well together. And I'm so glad that I decided to not keep trying, but rather pass her off to somebody else and see how it worked out for them.
Yeah, that's a cool option. And then if it really isn't working out, if you have a wild caught bird, just release it.
Just let it go.
See ya. By the way, if you guys are listening and you hear some rustling around, there is a hyacinth macaw sitting right next to us. What's her name?
His name is Magic.
Magic. So, hyacinth macaw named Magic. He's playing in the newspaper. So he's making a little bit of noise, and the dogs are are under the table begging for our attention.
Well, and sort of battling each other,
fighting each other for the attention as well. So it's apologize for the noise, but if you do want to see the hyacinth, definitely check out the video version on my YouTube at Wilderness Wonders. You'll see the hyacinth messing around, and it's big old bird. He's making a funny face right now. Look at that.
Are you goofy?
He's being a goofball.
He is. He's very playful.
I love hyacinth macaws. The hyacinth macaws are the largest parrot species. And so it's cool that we got one sitting right here.
And they don't breed well in captivity. So there's very few people that actually breed them. He was given to me. Like he was yeah, I know.
There's people who dream their whole life to have a hyacinth and can't find one. You have one given to you.
I used to joke with a friend of mine who bred birds. I said, one day I'm going to have a hyacinth and it's going to be free. And she's like, oh, right, Anita, that'll never happen. Oh, yeah, it did.
It happened.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. He's talking now.
Yeah, good boy.
There he goes.
And when he wants out, he says, and the birds want out. Okay.
He is a cute bird. That is so awesome. Somebody also let me know that I should ask you about a certain trip that you took.
So,
I don't know if they're setting you up to make you look funny, or if it's going to be. I don't know what's in store.
So, very early on in Zudiu's career, we started working with Jack Hanna. who is kind of like a grandfather to my kids now, because we started working with him when my daughter was about 9 months old. Started touring all over the country with him, doing shows everywhere. We were on different, like the Tonight Show. We did Letterman, did all kinds of different stuff. And he was invited by the president of Rwanda to come and tour the country. So he put together a group of people, and we were fortunate, my husband and I and my daughter, who was 12 at the time, got to go on this trip to Rwanda, which many people were very afraid of us taking our child there because they did go through a big, huge genocide. But I have to say, the safest country in Africa. It is amazing. Even their prisoners only have 3-foot wall around the prison, but they don't leave. It's weird, but it's a beautiful country, and we got to tour all over. And of course, everywhere we went, because we were asked by the president, every hotel that we arrived at, every place that we went, there would be people dancing and serving us drinks and doing all this stuff. And I didn't really think about it at the time until a friend of mine went to Rwanda, and I'm like, isn't it great how everywhere you go, people dance for you? And she goes, no, Anita. That was because you were with Jack. But we actually got to go out into this lake that is bordered by Tanzania, and there's an elephant that lives in this lake. And big, humongous bull elephant, and this tribe of pygmies
he's making noise
that lived there in Tanzania. We went on a boat. We actually bought a boat, had it shipped there so we could go out on this lake, and we went and met the elephant, and he was way out in the water, and this guy with a banana leaf and a yam, and he swims out there to this big bull elephant, and the bull elephant's name is Mutwale, and he's sitting there waving the elephant in like it's a big 747. He's like, Mutwale, Mutwale, and then he starts swimming as fast as he can back for shore, and here comes this elephant out of the water, and we're talking and we're filming because he had his whole film crew there, and I turn around and there's my 12-year-old daughter petting the tongue of this big bull elephant. And I'm like, I'm going to lose my child on this trip. I just know I'm going to. And so I told her after that, I said, okay, when we see wild animals, make sure that one of the guys that was with us, his name is Ernie. I said, make sure Ernie goes first. And you always be behind Ernie because Ernie's slow. So,
yeah.
But
actually, I'm in the middle of reading a book you might know, but it's called The Elephant Whisperer. Have you heard of that one?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I was listening to it on the drive here, and they're such incredible animals. From what at least I've seen so far among all the animal kingdom, the most emotional animals other than humans tend to be elephants.
Yes.
It sounds like you agree.
I do.
I don't know how many other people agree. If you think there's a more emotional species out there and can express it like elephants can,
well, the fact
let us know.
The fact that they will go to graveyards and mourn over family members that have been lost. It's I love elephants. I respect them immensely. But my best friend was actually killed by an elephant.
Oh no.
And still to this day, I still think that they are the most amazing animals. That was her whole life, was taking care of elephants. And weirdly, she said, if the world were to end today, I would want to be with the elephants. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a weird ending, but amazing animals, so incredibly intelligent. It's just cool to watch them.
You have to respect their power, that's for sure.
And she just happened to be in the wrong place.
Yeah.
It was one elephant charging another, and she just was in the way.
Oh man, that's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
There are many well-dedicated people who have been a part of conservation, education, who have been unfortunately met their demise or was killed by the very animals that they're trying to save, and that's happened more than once. For sure. I think we all think of Steve Irwin when I say that, and how unfortunate it was. But I feel like even if that happened to maybe me or a lot of these other well-dedicated people, it's almost like, well, I'd rather go out doing what I love.
That's exactly how I feel. I'd rather go out doing what I love than, on a freeway in a traffic accident or something. I admire people that dedicate their life to one species. Like,
Yeah, it's
I don't know
incredible.
that I could ever do that. But, you look at like Lori
Sometimes
Marker.
it's what it takes in order to have an impact on a certain species. I wish we could just help them all, but so you gotta hyper focus, and that's that. I mean, I see that trend among even when it comes to just falconry and training birds of prey. A lot of falconers tend to hyper focus into one or two species. I noticed that you've got just a ton of Harrises. Would you consider that your focus?
They are definitely my favorite. I like not just that they're easy to train and they seem to be a little bit more on the personality side, and then they all have their different personalities, but because of the social nature of Harris Hawks, they understand it. They get it. It's like, oh, well, you're part of my world now, and we will do this together. So it kind of reminds me of a Labrador Retriever. It's like, come on, let's go, have fun. And I think they're the most versatile bird that we fly. So I really do enjoy them. But because I also work in the abatement field, having a good selection of Harris Hawks that do different things seems to be really important. I just recently, 4 years ago, started flying falcons. And going from a Harris Hawk, which you almost can't lose, to a falcon that's flying these huge circles around you is like the most nerve-wracking thing that I ever did. And thank God I had a lot of really good mentors to teach me, but still makes me nervous. Every time I let one of my falcons go and it goes really far away or I can't see it anymore, it knows where I am. I might not know where it is. It still gives me a heart attack. But
and that happens. I was out with Steve Chingren, and his bird flew 7 miles away and it came back. It was very incredible. To see that, and what we think happened is his bird went up. This was actually Badger. Badger's my favorite that he has, and flew up. And Badger most likely saw a white truck, which is the same one Steve drives, and it just followed that truck 7 miles away. And so we're looking at the GPS, thinking, what's he doing? This has never happened before, kind of thing, and. Until we get back in the truck, we start driving, and Badger saw us from 7 miles away and came right back.
Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah, that's incredible. Like, if you've done it right, it seems like your bird will find you.
And that's, I think that's the most incredible thing about flying falcons is when they're up in the sky, they not only see you, but they see for miles in every direction. So you may be going, okay, I'm going to flush this duck off this pond for you, and the falcon's like, no, wait a second, there's a whole bunch of ducks 7 miles away.
Or pigeons or other falcons or anything.
Yep.
And then thank goodness for telemetry. But it must have been incredible for those before telemetry looking for their birds by watching other birds, or finding out where their bird was based off of how the ravens or the crows were acting, or maybe some rough-legged hawks were nearby, or an eagle was flying around, and that's how you found your bird. Is when your bird starts getting in danger is when you'd find your bird, because then you know where it's at. But now we can find them so much faster. And that happens.
It's almost like cheating, that we can just look at our phone and wherever that blue dot is where our bird is. But like you said, you used to have to watch the wild birds around you to kind of figure out where your bird was. If there was a really quiet spot where no birds were making any noise, probably because your predator is sitting in a tree somewhere, or if a bunch of crows are, gangbanging and swooping down and making a lot of noise, well, that's probably where your bird is. And we used to rely on that, finding our birds.
Yeah. Using crows to find your bird.
Yeah.
The crows and ravens love harassing the birds of prey around here. That's how I found a passage on the beach yesterday. Passage red tails. Several crows were diving in on them, and I'm like, what are they diving in on? And I look, and I knew exactly what it was because I saw the nice little white breast of a passage red tail. And I'm like, there's a red tail right in that tree. And so I couldn't even see anything else, but I knew it was passage red tail, and went up and got to watch this beautiful passage red-tailed diving and some grass for mice and things like that for quite a while. Let me get like 10 feet right up to it, and I've never had that happen before, where a wild passage redtail let me get that close. And I was talking to you about it, and you said it's been happening a lot lately.
It has been happening a lot.
Like, do you happen to know why?
My theory is that they are hungry, because we had so many fires come through California. So because there's not as much grass as there and undergrowth as there used to be, so our rodent and lagomorph population has decreased. So then you have all these passage birds that manage to get through whatever fire was raging through their area, but there's not enough food for them. So I think hunger will cause them to do behaviors that you wouldn't normally see. And my daughter literally was so close to one, she almost grabbed it with her hands. It was so close. And I think they're hungry, and they're being bolder, and nature's necessity. Well, you're here.
Yeah. So now they're spending more time closer to people where they normally wouldn't, and they're kind of becoming a little desensitized.
Well, and we see that too in California with our mountain lions. That when we have a lot of fires, the mountain lions will be down in the city, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, there's mountain lions everywhere." No, they've always been there.
Yeah.
They're just desperate enough to come down into the cities and stuff.
Most people just have a hard time getting their shoes dirty. Yeah. They want to stay on the concrete. And so they don't get to see the amazing world around them.
You said you noticed the ravens and the crows making noise. How many people saw them and just went, "Oh my gosh, they're so obnoxious," not realizing what was happening right in front of them, and completely unaware. And I think once we become falconers, we become so hyper aware of what every bird in the area is doing.
I think we get excited about it too.
We do.
See it, we're like, "Oh, there's a," even though it's like the most common bird of prey in all of North America, and we still get excited like a child on Christmas. And so, I mean, at least I do. I don't know if every falconer does. maybe given a few decades, maybe more people kind of go, "Oh, it's another one." I don't know.
I know, because I've been doing this.
Excited?
I still get excited.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Every bird. I mean, think about it. The red tail is the most successful bird we have in North America. Like, they have filled every niche that we have, and they thrive. No matter what we've thrown at them, they do so well. They do so well. And it's just amazing to me that they can be on a skyscraper in New York City, or they can be out in the middle of the Mojave Desert or wherever, and they thrive. So every time I see one in the wild, it's like, that's amazing.
It is pretty cool. That I do think that they are one of they're definitely in the top, I think, 3 most beautiful birds of prey out there in the world. And it's just really cool that they're like one of the most common here in North America. so it makes it really neat.
And I love the transition, when they're young and they're in that immature plumage, and then they transition into this completely different looking bird, and they seem to like sleek out once they get their adult feathers. I love that process.
They do end up looking a little thinner, because they do have more feathers when they're young, in their juvenile plumage, and then when they're older, they lose a little bit of that like down feather, so they lose a little bit of the insulation that they once had.
Yeah.
And so they do end up looking a little thinner, a little sleeker, and some people swear that they're even faster after their first year.
Who knows? I mean, you look at bald eagles, and you look at those first year bald eagles, and they're humongous compared to their parents.
They do look big, yeah.
They aren't. I mean, like, if you were to weigh them, they probably weigh the same, but there's so much more feather to them that they just look huge. And
I noticed part of the reason a lot of the juvenile bald eagles have a lot of jacked up or messed up feathers, because they're so dang clumsy, and so sometimes it makes them look bigger too, because they got like a feather out this way and all that, and it's so funny. I think that happens with most young birds in general. Even parrots, they tend to break or lose a lot of feathers just because they're clumsy. They're young and figuring it out. And so, and it's so adorable seeing a few bent out of place feathers on some of these eagles. They're great. Do you get to see bald eagles in this area?
I was actually flying my Saker falcon out in the field behind the house, and we have a group of probably about 100 crows and ravens that fly from the south end of our property over to north of our property. And usually as soon as I walk out with my falcon, they're gone. They're out of here. And I was flying him and I see this shadow pass over me and I thought, well, that's odd that this raven is still here. And then he flies by me, does a nice pass, and my falcon's flying up to do a little dive back at me again. And as I look up at him, I realize it's a bald eagle flying over. And he's turning towards my Saker falcon. And so I called him down. And even as he was on the ground, just before I picked him up, that bald eagle was in a dive coming straight at him. And it wasn't until I picked him up and had him on my glove that he veered off and took off. And scary, because a bald eagle will most definitely try to take him out of the sky. But yeah, we see them definitely during the migration. They come through.
Okay. Awesome. I tend to see them mostly through like December through February. They kind of come and hang out near Utah Lake, and they love that area for catching fish and everything like that. And we've been able to see like 6 on one tree before, and it's pretty cool sight to see. And out in the sagebrush desert, we do see bald eagles and golden eagles out there. When you see one, you're just kind of like, let's be done for today.
Yeah. Yep.
And the red tails, you don't have as much of a risk because normally they don't fly away enough to make that eagle brave enough to come down. But there's that one time they fly too far, and then your hawk's gone, which can be an unfortunate. But we're roughly running out of time. But one last question I want to ask both of you, actually. What has been one of your most memorable falconry moments? Like that one time that just kind of stuck with you? It can either be a cool story or a bird that's your mind always comes back to. What's kind of that moment that you're like, man, this is why I love falconry. This is why I practice falconry.
One time I was out flying my first male Harris hawk, and he was young, and he was flying with his brother, but he went into this, just barreling down this hill one time, and I'm looking, trying to see what he's seen, and he caught this big, huge jackrabbit all by himself, and he was so proud of himself. And I just remember coming down on it, and he was standing on this jackrabbit, and it was one of those pivotal moments where you realize that these birds are capable of so much more than we give them credit for it. For, a 600-gram bird to catch a 4-pound jack, that's just crazy.
Yeah, even my hawk's like a little over 2 pounds, but she caught herself an 8-pound white-tailed jackrabbit. If they can pin that head down, they got it. It's amazing.
I always say to the kids, it's like your dad catching a rhino with his bare hands. I'm not saying that your dad can't do that, but
yeah, it's me trying to hold down a 600-pound person. It's just
they're amazing.
It's amazing that they're able to do that and can figure out a way to hold down an animal like that. But it is hilarious when a hawk grabs onto a jackrabbit and they just go for a rodeo ride. Yeah. And that's always entertaining to see.
That is.
Yeah. How about you? What's been kind of your
There's so many moments. There's so many things. Well, I love lure flying a bird.
Share a few.
I love lure flying a bird and hunting with a falcon, because they go out and do such a dynamic thing, and you have to really watch. You have to stay really focused. There was one time on a landfill. I was flying a peregrine and an autumn peregrine, and I didn't want to move because he'd fly around and fly the area, flush stuff, and then he'd come back and he'd just land right next to me, and I was up above the action, up above the active face that was happening, where they were moving garbage around with tractors. And it was actually a month's worth of times like that. At the end of the day, I'd take and just fly him really hard afterwards, unless he was catching dove, on site, and then he'd usually have too much food for me to keep flying him. Harris hawks are very interactive, and the way they fly is really dynamic. I was flying 4 of them at a time a bit this summer on a project, and so I mentioned it before. We had these platforms about 180 foot up, 3 different trees. We'd harness in, climb up the tree, be up top, and then I started throwing food for them. So the bird would chase this food down, then they'd be coming back up. Apex predator in the area that's moving around so dynamically. All the other animals are watching this. We had a young blue heron that was around on a regular basis for about a month, and then finally it just took off. But he would come squawking out of there, all gangly like. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, fine." So, but that's what we were there to do, was just to keep these trees clear of birds for when they removed some of the trees, second growth timbers. Mm-hmm. If you've got something like a parrot that comes over and you're talking on your phone, knocks into you just to get your attention. I had a starling that we got I pulled from a nest at about 2 weeks. You hand feed them for about 3 or 4 days, and then they're self-feeding and thermoregulating. They can regulate their own temperature. You don't have to keep them warm anymore. Raised him up. We had him. He only lived for like 5 years. But I'm sitting at my desk one day, and he's looking out of this dog crate that I kept him in. He had a couple perches and a bath pan, always a bath pan. And he says, "Stupid horse, stupid horsey." And I'm going, what? Where did he get this thing? Still trying to figure out where that came from. Animals are amazing. Dogs, again, I'll go back. The dogs are the most amazing animals. But to have a long wing that goes up, sometimes, with thermals in a warm day and skies out, and you're looking for it, you can find it maybe with binoculars. It's up, easily 1,200-1,500 feet. It's just an amazing experience, especially when you can flush game for them and they just go into a stoop that's that long. Usually you want them a little closer to catch stuff, but to see them go through that,
it's amazing to witness.
Bragging rights. I took a pig with a Harris hawk. So it was a piglet. We flushed the mom. We were looking for jacks. The mom flushed. She was about 200 pounds, 250 pounds. And then I see all these, short-eared rabbits. And I'm going, what? It took me a minute to figure it. And my Harris hawk went in and grabbed one. It was probably a 4 or 5 pound piglet. And,
man.
Yeah.
You got to bag a piglet. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's good.
That is neat. You almost bagged a coyote at one point.
It was crazy.
I feel like you totally missed an opportunity. I don't mean to make you feel bad or anything, because that's such an awesome story, that even that your bird was brave enough to catch one. And are there people out there who even hawk pigs? Like, is that even a thing? I've never heard of that happening.
I think it would be a pretty dangerous thing because what if
strong animals.
the female, flushed,
back.
if she came back.
Ooh,
I've taken pigs with my dogs before, and
It's scary because pigs are nasty.
awesome though. Oh
Yes.
yeah, they can cause damage.
Yeah.
They're scary animals. They're strong. I raised pigs in FFA here throughout high school. And they're so strong, and they don't even know. And the wild ones are they're terrifying. That's cool that you can say that. Wow, you caught a piglet. Back to pig.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. Well, thank you too for showing me around and enjoying some hawking with you guys and seeing the falcon fly a little bit. That was really, really cool, and sitting down and having a conversation. Is there any social media plugins you'd like me to plug in for you?
Sure. The company that my daughter and I run is called The Falconry Experience. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and
I'll put links for those in the description.
Of course, our website. But we do falconry experiences all over the western U.S.
Awesome. I'll make sure to definitely put that in the description so they can find you. Is there anything that you'd like to tag in there?
I have a company, Full Circle Falconry and Wildlife Management. So I do abatement work, but I also do a lot of educational stuff. Last year we participated in 7 different Renaissance fairs. So
that's awesome.
It's way fun. We get to tease people all day long. Usually 3 or 4 shows a day. And
I think the funniest question I always get at those shows are, does your bird come back?
Yeah.
And you're like, no,
Nope.
never. Like, the bird's sitting there.
My favorite response is...
I always find that one so funny. Of course he comes back. If he wasn't, I wouldn't even have him. Like,
Exactly. My favorite response is, this bird's come back every time so far.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes they spend the night out. Sometimes you lose track of a bird.
Sometimes the question that comes out of their mouth isn't always what they mean.
Well, and I think too, people
fun.
get so enthusiastic about asking questions. The first thing that pops into their mind is the question that they ask, and it isn't that they really want the answer to that question. They just want to engage you because it's such an interesting thing to them.
For sure. And it is always kind of funny when you do think about it.
Yeah. Nope, never does.
No, it never comes back. They never come back.
I just get a new bird every day.
Every day. I just go and grab a new one because they never stay. Oh, man. Well, again, thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure being here. Can't wait to maybe even come back and bring my hawk.
Yes,
Nice.
absolutely.
Yeah.
See her
Definitely.
fly around sometime. It may have to wait till next season, but it's gonna happen.
Well, you did amazing with that bird. She is awesome.
I got lucky. I got lucky with the good bird.
Cool.
I don't know if I am either good with training animals or good with training birds of prey, or I just keep getting lucky with good animals because I feel like most of the animals I get or have the opportunity to train just figure it out. And they're smart animals and they do well.
You only get lucky so many times. After that, it's skill.
I don't know. They're really nice animals. Most of them are just so sweet.
Life is
I
an
run into
experiment.
a lot of sweet animals.
Yeah. Life is an experiment.
But they do make me look good, and that's nice. That's very, very kind of them to make me look good. Again, thank you guys so much for listening and watching. You'll be able to, if you're listening, go find us on YouTube at Wilderness Wonders. If you prefer to, say, listen to these podcasts from now on, you can also find the audio version on most of your favorite podcasting sites. We're still working on getting them up on all of them, but eventually they will all be there. So maybe by the time you're listening to this, it will be on, the Apple Podcast and Audible and places like that. So, again, thank you. Have a wonderful day and happy hawking.